The blue waters of Zephyr Prime turned red with blood. Admiral Kesshai watched through the viewing port of his command station as another transport ship exploded in the distance. The Krenth had been attacking for 6 months now, and the Zephyrian Defense Force was losing badly. "Admiral, we have lost contact with the Third Fleet," reported Commander Veltar, her gills fluttering with fear. "The Krenth are moving toward the inner planets." Kesshai closed his large, dark eyes. The Zephyrian Council had tried everything. They sent diplomats to the Krenth Dominion, offering trade agreements and peaceful coexistence. The insect-like aliens had responded by broadcasting the torture of the diplomatic team across all communication channels. They tried forming alliances with other peaceful species, but everyone was too afraid of the Krenth to help. The Krenth were not just conquerors, they were something far worse. They stripped entire planets of resources, worked populations to death in mining operations, and seemed to enjoy causing pain. Their ships were massive, black things that looked like giant insects floating through space. Each one carried thousands of warriors bred only for war. "Sir, we have one more option," said Veltar quietly. "The Council has approved sending a message to the Deathworlders." Kesshai's eyes opened wide. Every species in the galaxy had heard stories about the humans. They came from a planet so dangerous that most aliens considered it uninhabitable. Earth had extreme weather, poisonous plants, deadly animals, and gravity so strong it would crush most beings. The humans who lived there were said to be violent predators who fought wars for thousands of years. "The humans have never responded to any communication attempts," Kesshai said. "Most species think they are too dangerous to contact." "The Galactic database says they have a military force," Veltar replied. "If the stories are true, they might be strong enough to fight the Krenth." Kesshai looked at the tactical display. Red markers showed Krenth forces spreading across Zephyrian space like a plague. In 2 weeks they would reach the homeworld. Billions of Zephyrians would die or become slaves. "Prepare the message," he ordered. 3 days later, the Zephyrian Council gathered in the Great Chamber. The water was shallow here, allowing the 7 species of the Federation to meet together. Speaker Morden, eldest of the Coral people, addressed the assembly. "The message has been sent to the human space territory," she announced. "We have offered our entire treasury, our water purification technology, and mining rights to 3 systems in exchange for military assistance." "Do we know if they received it?" asked Representative Zilko of the Deep Current clan. "Yes. Their communication system sent an automated response. The message was delivered to something called the Human Defense Coalition." The chamber fell silent except for the gentle sound of water circulation systems. Everyone knew this was their last hope. If the humans refused to help, the Zephyrian civilization would end within weeks. "What do we know about human military capabilities?" asked Admiral Kesshai. Speaker Morden activated a holographic display showing what little information the Galactic database contained about humans. The data was limited and often contradictory. "According to this, humans have been fighting wars on their planet for over 10,000 years, she read. "They have weapons that use nuclear fusion, kinetic projectiles that move at significant fractions of light speed, and biological immunity to most known toxins and diseases." "That cannot be accurate," said Commander Relshan of the Engineering Corps. "No species could survive constant warfare for that long." "The database also says they have never lost a war against another species," Mordun continued. "But they have never fought in galactic conflicts because most civilizations consider them too unpredictable to work with." Admiral Kesshai studied the tactical projections. Even if half the stories about humans were true, they might have a chance against the Krenth. But would they come? And if they did, could the Zephyrians trust them? "Admiral, incoming transmission," announced a communications officer. "It's from human space." The chamber erupted in excited chatter. Kesshai moved quickly to the communication station. The message was audio only, transmitted in basic galactic standard. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Coalition ship Retribution. We have received your request for military assistance against the Krenth Dominion. A reconnaissance fleet will arrive in your space within 72 hours to assess the situation. Prepare a full briefing on enemy capabilities and current tactical positions. Chen out. The transmission ended. For a moment, nobody spoke. 72 hours? Whispered Commander Veltar. Their nearest base must be at least 20 light-years away. How are they traveling so fast? Asked Representative Zilko. Admiral Kesahai was already working on his communicator. All defense stations, prepare detailed reports on Krenth fleet movements, weapons capabilities, and tactical patterns. The humans are coming. As word spread through Zephyrian space, reactions were mixed. Some celebrated, believing the legendary Deathworlders would save them. Others worried they had invited something worse than the Krenth into their territory. On the outer monitoring stations, Zephyrian sensor operators watched their long-range scanners carefully. If the humans were really coming, they would see them soon. Lieutenant Culver was on duty at Station 7 when the alerts began flashing. His scanner showed something approaching from human space, but the readings made no sense. Command, this is Station 7. I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions in Sector 15. Station 7, explain your readings, came the reply. Culver checked his instruments again. Sir, it looks like something is bending space itself. The distortion is moving at. This can't be right. It's moving faster than light without using jump gates. Keep monitoring, Station 7. 15 minutes later, the distortion stopped. Culver's scanner showed 7 ships hanging in space where empty void had been moments before. The ships were unlike anything he had ever seen. They were gray and angular, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. Each one was the size of a Krenth battleship, but they looked far more dangerous. Command, 7 human vessels have arrived in Sector 15. They're not using any propulsion system I can identify, but they're moving toward our position. Admiral Kesahai received the report in his command center. The humans had arrived exactly when they said they would. Now the real test would begin. As the human ships moved through Zephyrian space, every sensor station tracked their progress. The vessels moved with perfect formation and seemed to ignore the laws of physics that governed other spacecraft. They didn't use traditional engines, but somehow pushed themselves through space at incredible speeds. When the human fleet reached Zephyr Prime, Admiral Kesahai was waiting in orbit aboard his flagship. The human ship Retribution was larger than any Zephyrian vessel, bristling with weapons and covered in armor that looked like it could stop asteroid impacts. A communication channel opened and Admiral Kesahai found himself looking at a human for the first time. Captain Sarah Chen was smaller than he expected, but there was something in her eyes that made him nervous. She looked like a predator studying prey. Admiral Kesahai, I'm Captain Chen. We're here to evaluate your situation and determine if we can help you against the Krenth. Captain Chen, we are grateful you came. The Krenth have superior numbers and firepower. Our defensive fleets have been destroyed. Show me everything you know about their capabilities. For the next 6 hours, Zephyrian intelligence officers briefed the humans on Krenth tactics, weapons, and fleet compositions. Captain Chen listened without expression, occasionally asking technical questions that showed she understood military strategy better than most Zephyrian admirals. The Krenth rely on overwhelming force and psychological warfare, she finally said. They're used to fighting species that surrender quickly. Has anyone ever fought back effectively? No, Captain. Every species they have attacked has either been conquered or destroyed. Captain Chen smiled and Admiral Kesahai felt a chill run through his body. It was not a friendly expression. Then they're about to learn something new about warfare, she said. We'll help you, Admiral. But understand this. When humans fight a war, we fight to win completely. There won't be anything left of the Krenth military when we're finished. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Kesahai staring at the human ship. Part of him was relieved that help had arrived. Another part wondered if the Zephyrians had just invited something even more dangerous than the Krenth into their space. The Deathworlders had answered their plea. Now everyone would learn what that really meant. The Krenth Dominion had ruled through fear for over 2 centuries. Their black ships moved through space like harbingers of death, and no species had ever successfully resisted them. Emperor Zekmoth believed his empire was invincible. That belief was about to be tested. Admiral Marcus Torres commanded the human advance fleet from the bridge of the battleship Indomitable. Unlike the Zephyrian ships with their curved organic designs, human vessels looked like weapons built for war. Every surface was armored, every angle designed to deflect enemy fire. "Captain Rodriguez, take your squadron to the Kepler system," Torres ordered. "I want full surveillance on Krenth operations there." "Understood, Admiral." "What are our rules of engagement?" "Observe only. Don't engage unless fired upon. We need to understand how they fight before we start killing them." The human reconnaissance ships moved through space, using technology that seemed impossible to other species. They could bend space-time itself, allowing them to travel faster than light without the energy requirements that limited other civilizations. More importantly, they could hide their energy signatures, making them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. Captain Elena Rodriguez piloted her stealth ship toward the Kepler system, where intelligence reports indicated the Krenth were strip mining 3 planets. As her ship approached, the scope of Krenth operations became clear. Massive orbital platforms surrounded each planet, connected by streams of cargo ships carrying raw materials. The planets themselves were being systematically destroyed, their surfaces stripped away layer by layer. Millions of enslaved beings worked in the mining operations under armed guard. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Mason from the sensor station. "They're destroying entire worlds." Captain Rodriguez watched Krenth overseers using energy weapons to discipline work crews. She saw transport ships dumping bodies into space when workers became too weak to continue. This wasn't just conquest, it was systematic genocide. "Record everything," she ordered. "Command needs to see this." Her ship moved closer, using passive sensors to analyze Krenth technology. Their weapons were powerful but crude, designed for destroying large targets rather than precision strikes. Their ships were heavily armored but slow to maneuver. Most importantly, their tactical formations showed they had never faced serious opposition. "Captain, I'm detecting a Krenth patrol approaching our position," reported the navigation officer. "Maintain stealth protocol. Let's see how good their sensors are." 3 Krenth destroyers passed within 5 kilometers of the human ship without detecting it. Rodriguez smiled grimly. The insects were dangerous to civilians, but they had never fought a real military force. Over the next week, human reconnaissance teams gathered intelligence throughout Krenth space. They observed battle tactics, analyzed weapon capabilities, and documented the systematic destruction of conquered worlds. The data painted a clear picture. The Krenth were brutal and efficient at crushing weak opponents, but they had critical vulnerabilities. Admiral Torres reviewed the intelligence reports in his command center. The Krenth fleet was massive, over 3,000 ships divided into 7 battle groups. Each group was capable of destroying an entire star system, but Torres had fought against worse odds before. Their formation discipline is excellent for intimidation, but terrible for actual combat, he told his staff. They bunch their ships together because they've never faced an enemy with long-range precision weapons. "What about their armor?" asked Commander Singh. "Thick but not well-designed. It's meant to stop the energy weapons used by most galactic species. It won't stop our kinetic projectiles or plasma cannons." Torres activated a holographic display showing Krenth fleet movements. They always attack the same way. Massive frontal assault with overwhelming numbers. They rely on psychological warfare to break enemy morale before the shooting starts. "Sir, what's our assessment of their individual capabilities?" asked Captain Williams. "Each Krenth warrior is dangerous in hand-to-hand combat, but they're not trained for modern warfare. They've been fighting primitives for so long they've forgotten how to face a peer opponent." The briefing continued for several hours as human officers analyzed every aspect of Krenth military doctrine. Unlike other species who had faced the Dominion, humans approached warfare as a science. Every enemy weakness would be exploited, every tactical advantage maximized. Meanwhile, in Zephyrian space, Admiral Kesshai was learning that humans had very different ideas about military cooperation. Captain Chen had established a refugee processing center on an asteroid base, but her methods were unlike anything the Zephyrians had seen. "Captain, your medical teams are treating Krenth prisoners the same as our wounded civilians," Admiral Kesshai observed during an inspection. "The Geneva Conventions apply to all prisoners of war," Chen replied. "Geneva Conventions? Rules for conducting warfare humanely. We don't torture prisoners or harm civilians, even enemy civilians." Kesshai was confused. But the Krenth have tortured and killed millions of our people. Don't you want revenge? Captain Chen stopped walking and looked directly at the Zephyrian admiral. Admiral, revenge is an emotion. War is a profession. We'll destroy the Krenth military because it's necessary, not because we hate them. This concept was difficult for most aliens to understand. Humans could fight with devastating efficiency while maintaining strict ethical codes. They separated military targets from civilian populations and treated prisoners according to established rules. How do you maintain such discipline during combat? Kesai asked. Training and culture. Human soldiers are taught that how we fight is as important as whether we win. Becoming monsters to defeat monsters isn't victory. It's surrender. As they toured the medical facility, Kesai watched human medics treating wounded Krenth prisoners with the same care they gave Zephyrian civilians. The contrast with Krenth brutality was striking. Captain, I must ask, are all human military units like yours? What do you mean? So controlled. The stories we hear make humans sound like savage warriors. Chen smiled. Admiral, we are savage warriors. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years and we're very good at it. But being good at war doesn't mean being evil. The most dangerous predator is one that can choose when to kill and when to show mercy. That evening, Kesahai attended a briefing where Captain Chen outlined the human battle plan. The strategy was unlike anything in Zephyrian military doctrine. We'll divide the Krenth fleet into smaller groups, then destroy each group individually, Chen explained. Human ships will use hit-and-run tactics to disrupt their formations, while Zephyrian forces evacuate civilians from threatened systems. Captain, the Krenth have numerical superiority of 15-1, pointed out Commander Veltar. Numbers don't matter if the enemy can't coordinate their forces effectively. We'll use their tactical rigidity against them. Admiral Kesahai studied the battle projections. How can you be certain this will work? Because, Admiral, the Krenth have never fought humans before. They don't know what we're capable of. As the briefing concluded, Kesahai realized the humans weren't just confident. They were absolutely certain they would win. This wasn't bravado or ignorance. It was the quiet confidence of professionals who had studied their enemy and found them wanting. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Long-range sensors detected a massive Krenth fleet moving towards Zephyrian space. Over 2,000 ships led by Emperor Zekmoth himself were approaching for what the Krenth called the final cleansing. Admiral Torres, this is Captain Chen. The main Krenth force is moving against us. They'll be here in 4 days. Understood, Captain. Begin Phase 1 of the operation. Across human space, the largest military mobilization in galactic history began. Warships that had been stationed at defensive positions throughout the Human Defense Coalition were recalled for active duty. Troop transports loaded with Marine battalions prepared for deployment. Most importantly, weapon systems that other species considered theoretical were brought online and made ready for combat. The humans were about to show the galaxy what Deathworlders could do when they decided to wage war. Emperor Zekmoth received the report, while seated on his command throne aboard the dreadnought Absolute Dominion. The massive ship was the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons and carrying 50,000 Krenth warriors. The humans have deployed their entire fleet to defend the water breathers, reported war leader Hektar. How many ships? The Emperor asked. Intelligence indicates approximately 200 vessels. Zekemoth's mandibles clicked in amusement. 200 ships against our armada? These Deathworlders are either insane or incredibly arrogant. Shall we begin bombardment of their positions, my Emperor? No. I want to see what makes these humans think they can challenge the Dominion. Deploy the 7th Battle Group first. Let them exhaust themselves against our advance forces before we demonstrate the true power of the Krenth Empire. What Emperor Zekmoth didn't know was that human. Intelligence had been monitoring Krenth communications for weeks. They knew exactly when and where the enemy would attack. More importantly, they understood that the Krenth viewed this as a demonstration rather than a serious battle. Admiral Torres smiled as he read the intercepted transmissions. The enemy was about to learn the difference between conquering frightened civilians and fighting Earth's finest warriors. War Leader. Hektar commanded the 7th Battle Group from his flagship Bone Crusher. 500 Krenth ships moved in perfect formation toward the coordinates where human forces waited. Each vessel carried warriors bred for conquest. weapons designed to destroy planets, and the absolute confidence that came from 2 centuries of unopposed victory. The Krenth had never lost a battle. Today that would change. Admiral Torres watched the enemy approach from the bridge of the Indomitable. The human fleet was spread across the Nexus system, in formations that would have seemed random to most observers. But Torres was not most observers. He was a graduate of the Terran War College, veteran of the Martian Rebellion, and heir to 10,000 years of human military evolution. "Admiral, Krenth forces will be in weapons range in 30 minutes, reported Commander Singh. "All ships, this is Torres. Execute Battle Plan Alpha on my mark." Throughout the human fleet, warship crews made final preparations for combat. Unlike other species who relied on energy shields and defensive formations, humans had built their ships for offensive warfare. Every vessel was a predator designed to hunt and kill. Captain Elena Rodriguez commanded the destroyer-pack Shadow Squadron from her ship Wraith. Her 12 vessels were positioned behind an asteroid field, invisible to Krenth sensors. Human stealth technology was centuries ahead of anything else in the galaxy. "All ships maintain silent running," she ordered. "Let them pass." The Krenth advance force moved past the asteroid field without detecting the human ships hiding there. War leader Hector was focused on the obvious targets ahead. The main human battle line arranged in what appeared to be a defensive formation. Prey ships clustered together for protection. Hector clicked to his subordinates. "We will crush them in one assault." What Hector saw as defensive clustering was actually an offensive formation called the Anvil. The human ships were positioned to concentrate their firepower while maintaining maximum mobility. It was a tactic developed during Earth's nuclear wars and perfected through centuries of combat experience. "Human vessels. This is War Leader Hector of the Krenth Dominion," came the transmission. "You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." Admiral Torres opened a channel in response. "War Leader Hector, this is Admiral Torres of the Human Defense Coalition. Your demands are refused. If you want a fight, come and take it." The challenge was issued in perfect galactic standard, but the tone conveyed something that transcended language barriers. Torres wasn't just refusing surrender. He was inviting the Krenth to try their worst. Hector clicked his mandibles in rage. No species had ever shown such disrespect to the Dominion. "All ships, attack formation. Destroy the human fleet." 500 Krenth ships surged forward in a massive wave assault, their plasma cannons charged to full power, their torpedo tubes loaded with planet-killer warheads. The formation was designed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer volume of fire. "Admiral, Krenth forces are beginning their attack run," reported the sensor officer. Torres studied the tactical display with the calm expression of a master chess player, watching an opponent make a predicted move. "All ships execute Maneuver 7. The human battle line suddenly dispersed. Ships that had been clustered together moments before scattered in multiple directions, moving with acceleration that defied the Krenth understanding of physics. Instead of meeting the enemy charge head-on, the humans simply disappeared from the impact zone. Where did they go? War leader Hector demanded. Before his sensor operator could respond, Shadow Squadron struck from behind. Captain Rodriguez's destroyers emerged from the asteroid, field and opened fire on the Krenth rear, guard with weapons that had never been seen in galactic warfare. Railguns fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The tungsten penetrators punched through Krenth armor like it was paper, creating massive internal explosions. Plasma cannons designed for ship-to-ship combat vaporized smaller vessels entirely. "Rear guard is under attack," reported a Krenth communications officer. "Unknown weapon types causing massive damage." Hector was still processing this information when the main human battle line reappeared on his flanks. Admiral Torres had positioned his ships for a classic Earth naval tactic called crossing the T, allowing his entire fleet to fire broadside salvos while only the leading edge of the enemy formation could return fire. The USS Indomitable fired its main guns for the first time in combat. The kinetic projectiles were designed to destroy hardened military targets, and Krenth ships had never faced weapons with such devastating power. The Krenth heavy cruiser Fleshrender simply disintegrated when a railgun projectile struck its power core. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human flagship," Hector ordered, but concentrating fire required coordination, and the human attack had shattered Krenth formation integrity. Individual ships fired wildly while trying to maneuver into effective positions. Their plasma bolts and missiles struck empty space where human ships had been moments before. Human vessels moved like predatory fish, darting in to deliver devastating attacks before disappearing again. Their acceleration curves and maneuver capabilities were beyond anything the Krenth had encountered. Ships that should have been massive and slow moved like fighters, striking from impossible angles. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Flesh Render, Blood Drinker, and Bone Saw," reported the tactical officer aboard Bone Crusher. War leader Hector watched his formation disintegrate under attacks that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The humans weren't fighting like any species he had encountered. They showed no fear, made no mistakes, and demonstrated tactical flexibility that was almost supernatural. Captain Rodriguez led Shadow Squadron in another attack run, this time targeting Krenth command ships. Her destroyers moved in perfect coordination, each vessel covering the others while delivering precise strikes. The Krenth had numerical superiority, but they couldn't bring their weapons to bear effectively. "Rodriguez to all ships," she transmitted. "Target their communication arrays. Let's see how well they coordinate without their command network." Precision strikes from human weapons disabled Krenth communication systems throughout the formation. Ships that had been operating as a unified fleet became isolated units fighting individual battles. Without central coordination, their numerical advantage became meaningless. Admiral Torres observed the battle from his command center with professional satisfaction. The Krenth were dangerous opponents, but they fought according to rigid doctrines that assumed enemy compliance with their expectations. When faced with an enemy that refused to cooperate with their tactical assumptions, they became confused and ineffective. "Admiral, Krenth forces are beginning to retreat," reported Commander Singh. "Negative. Pursue and destroy. We don't want any survivors reporting our capabilities to the main fleet." The human pursuit was methodical and devastating. Ships that tried to flee found themselves hunted by destroyers that could outrun and outfight them. Vessels that tried to make a stand were destroyed by concentrated fire from the main battle line. War leader. Hector realized his situation was hopeless when the Bone Crusher's shields failed under sustained railgun bombardment. His ship was dying around him, and his fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors fleeing in all directions. "This is impossible," he whispered. "No species fights like this." His communication officer, wounded but still functional, managed to send one final transmission before the ship's power core overloaded. "Emperor, the humans. They're not like other species. They fight like—" The transmission ended when the Bone Crusher exploded. Of the 500 ships in the 7th Battle Group, fewer than 50 escaped to report their defeat. The survivors brought stories that seemed impossible: humans who fought without fear, weapons that defied known physics, and tactical capabilities that surpassed anything in Krenth experience. Emperor Zekmoth received the reports in stunned silence. In a single engagement, the humans had destroyed 90% of an elite Krenth formation while suffering minimal casualties themselves. It was not just a defeat. It was a demonstration of superiority that challenged everything the Dominion believed about warfare. "Prepare the entire fleet for battle," he finally ordered. "We will crush these humans with overwhelming force." But even as he gave the command, doubt crept into the Emperor's mind. For the first time in his reign, he wondered if the Krenth Empire might face an enemy it could not defeat. Meanwhile, Admiral Torres was already planning the next phase of operations. The first engagement had been a test, a chance to evaluate Krenth capabilities and demonstrate human superiority. Now the real war would begin. "Captain Chen, this is Torres. Phase 1 is complete. Enemy advance force has been neutralized with minimal friendly casualties." "Understood, Admiral." "Are you ready for Phase 2? Torres smiled as he looked at the tactical display showing the main Krenth fleet approaching. Emperor Zekmoth was bringing everything he had for one decisive battle. It was exactly what the humans wanted. "Rodriguez, bring your squadron back to the main fleet. We're going to need everyone for what comes next." As Shadow Squadron rejoined the human formation, crews throughout the fleet prepared for the largest space battle in. Emperor Zekmoth had ruled the Krenth Dominion for 40 years and commanded its fleets for 60. He had personally overseen the conquest of 17 species and the destruction of 12 others. No enemy had ever seriously challenged his forces. The human fleet waiting in the Nexus system changed everything. From the bridge of his massive dreadnought Absolute Dominion, the Emperor studied tactical displays showing 2,000 Krenth vessels arranged in battle formation. Each ship carried elite warriors, advanced weapons, and the righteous fury of an empire that had never known defeat. Opposing them were fewer than 300 human ships arranged in formations that defied conventional military logic. Instead of clustering for mutual defense, they were spread across the entire star system in small groups that seemed vulnerable to concentrated attack. War Leader Vexhan, what is your assessment of the human deployment? The Emperor asked. They appear to be divided into hunting packs, my Emperor. Perhaps they intend to conduct hit-and-run attacks against our full fleet. They would be destroyed piecemeal. Zekmoth activated his personal communicator to address the human commander directly. Human Admiral, I am Emperor Zekmoth of the Krenth Dominion. You have destroyed one of my battle groups, but now you face the might of our entire empire. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be swift. Admiral Torres responded from the bridge of the Indomitable. Emperor Zekmoth, this is Admiral Torres. Your offer is declined. If you want to test your empire against human military doctrine, we're ready to provide a demonstration. The casual confidence in Torres's voice sent a chill through the Krenth command staff. This human showed no fear when facing impossible odds. Either he was insane or he knew something the Krenth did not. All ships advance to attack positions, the Emperor ordered. We will destroy them with overwhelming firepower. The Krenth fleet moved forward in a formation that had conquered half the galaxy. 2,000 ships arranged in concentric spheres, each layer providing overlapping fields of fire. It was a formation designed to crush any enemy through sheer volume of destructive power. Admiral Torres watched the enemy approach with the calm expression of a professional who had studied his craft for decades. The Krenth formation was impressive but predictable. They were using the same tactics that had worked against primitive opponents for centuries. All ships, this is Torres. Execute Battle Plan Omega. Throughout the human fleet, captains received targeting data and maneuvering instructions. The plan was complex, requiring precise timing and absolute trust in the abilities of fellow commanders. It was the kind of coordinated operation that only experienced military professionals could execute. Captain Elena Rodriguez commanded Squadron 7 from the destroyer Wraith. Her 12 ships were positioned near the system's primary star, using solar radiation to mask their energy signatures. As the Krenth fleet approached, she prepared to demonstrate why human warships were designed for offensive warfare. All ships load Sunbreaker torpedoes, she ordered. Target the enemy command vessel. Sunbreaker torpedoes were humanity's most advanced weapons, self-guided missiles with nuclear warheads and stealth capabilities that made them nearly impossible to intercept. Each one carried enough destructive power to cripple a battleship. The Krenth formation reached optimal range, and Emperor Zekmoth prepared to order the final assault. All ships target the human flagship. Concentrate all fire. His order was interrupted when Sunbreaker torpedoes struck the Absolute Dominion from multiple directions. The massive dreadnought's shields flared and failed under the coordinated nuclear bombardment. Explosions rippled across its hull as secondary systems overloaded. Damage report, the Emperor demanded. Multiple hull breaches, power grid failing, weapon systems offline, reported the damage control officer. We've lost primary communications. Before the Krenth could respond effectively, the rest of the human fleet opened fire. Railguns launched projectiles at velocities that made interception impossible. Plasma cannons vaporized smaller vessels entirely. Most devastating of all, human ships demonstrated maneuverability that defied the laws of physics as understood by galactic civilization. The USS Indomitable accelerated directly toward the center of the Krenth formation, its heavy armor absorbing enemy fire while its main guns destroyed everything in its path. Captain Sarah Chen had turned her battleship into a guided missile, punching through enemy lines with devastating effect. Chen to all ships, she transmitted. Begin ramming speed maneuvers. Show them what Deathworlder ships are built for. What followed challenged every assumption about space combat held by galactic civilization. Human ships didn't just fire on the enemy. They physically rammed Krenth vessels, using their superior construction and shielding to destroy opponents through direct collision. The destroyer Phoenix rammed the Krenth cruiser Flesh Ripper at full acceleration. The impact destroyed both ships, but the exchange rate favored the humans. One human destroyer had eliminated a vessel 3 times its size while demonstrating that humans were willing to trade their lives for victory. War leader Vexhan watched his formation disintegrate under attacks that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Human ships moved like living things, striking from impossible angles before disappearing into the chaos of battle. Their weapons were more advanced than anything in the Krenth arsenal, and their tactics were beyond comprehension. "Sir, we've lost contact with 30% of our fleet," reported the tactical officer. "The humans are using weapons we've never encountered. How is this possible?" "We have superior numbers." Before anyone could answer, the bridge shook under the impact of railgun projectiles. Human ships had surrounded the Krenth command group and were systematically destroying the fleet's leadership structure. Admiral Torres coordinated the battle from his mobile command center, directing squadron movements with the precision of a master tactician. Unlike the Krenth, who relied on rigid formations and overwhelming firepower, humans fought with fluid tactics that adapted constantly to changing conditions. "Rodriguez, take your squadron through the enemy rear guard," he ordered. "Williams, coordinate with the Zephyrian forces for civilian evacuation. Singh, begin Phase 3 of the operation." Phase 3 was the systematic destruction of Krenth fleet coordination. Human ships targeted command vessels, communication arrays, and formation leaders with surgical precision. Without central coordination, the massive Krenth fleet became a collection of individual ships fighting separate battles. Captain Rodriguez led Squadron 7 in a devastating attack on the Krenth fleet carriers. These massive vessels transported thousands of fighters and ground assault troops, but their size made them vulnerable to concentrated fire from human destroyers. "All ships, target the carrier flight decks," she ordered. "Prevent them from launching ground assault forces." Sunbreaker torpedoes destroyed carrier after carrier, eliminating the Krenth ability to conduct planetary invasions. Each destroyed vessel took thousands of elite warriors with it, reducing the Dominion's military capacity with surgical efficiency. Emperor Zekmoth realized his empire was dying around him. The absolute Dominion was crippled, his fleet was scattered, and the humans seemed capable of impossible tactical maneuvers. For the first time in his life, he faced the possibility of complete defeat. "All ships retreat to the outer system," he ordered. "We must regroup," and his command was interrupted when the bridge exploded around him. A human boarding party had somehow infiltrated his flagship and was fighting their way toward the command center. The idea of enemy soldiers aboard his personal vessel was inconceivable, but the sounds of combat in the corridors were undeniable. Colonel Jake Harrison led the human boarding team through the corridors of the Absolute Dominion with methodical precision. His Special Forces soldiers were equipped with power armor that allowed them to function in hostile environments and weapons designed for close-quarters combat. "Alpha Team, secure the engine room," he ordered. "Bravo Team, take the communication center. Charlie Team, with me to the bridge." The Krenth warriors defending their flagship fought with desperate courage, but they had never faced human marines in combat. Harrison's soldiers moved through the ship like death itself, eliminating resistance with cold efficiency. When the boarding team reached the bridge, Emperor Zekmoth was waiting with his personal guard. The massive insectoid ruler raised his ceremonial battle axe and prepared to die fighting. "You will not take me alive, human," he declared. Colonel Harrison aimed his rifle at the Emperor but did not fire. "Surrender, and you'll be treated according to the Geneva Conventions. Resist and we'll kill every warrior on this ship. I am Zekmoth, Emperor of the Krenth Dominion. I do not surrender." The Emperor charged with his battle axe raised. Harrison's shot took him center mass, dropping the insectoid ruler to the deck. The personal guard hesitated, uncertain whether to continue fighting or surrender. "Drop your weapons," Harrison ordered. "The battle is over." Across the Nexus system, the surviving Krenth ships received the news of their Emperor's death with shock and disbelief. Without central leadership, their formation completely collapsed. Individual ships began surrendering or fleeing toward the Galactic Rim. Admiral Torres surveyed the battlefield with grim satisfaction. Of the 2,000 ships in the Krenth fleet, fewer than 300 remained up 3 months after the Battle of Nexus. The galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Krenth Dominion, which had terrorized civilized space for 2 centuries, no longer existed as a military force. Their surviving ships had been confiscated, their weapons destroyed, and their territories placed under human administration. Admiral Torres stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above New Geneva. watching construction ships build what would become the Galactic Justice Center. The facility would serve as a court for trying Krenth war criminals and a symbol of humanity's new role in galactic affairs. Admiral, the Galactic Council has requested another meeting, reported Commander Singh. They want to discuss the terms of the peace treaty. Torres nodded. The various alien governments were still struggling to comprehend how quickly the situation had changed. 3 months ago, the Krenth had been an unstoppable force conquering everything in their path. Now they were prisoners awaiting trial for crimes against sentient beings. What's the current status of Krenth space? Torres asked, completely pacified. The remaining civilian populations have been relocated to designated worlds under UN supervision. Colonel Harrison's teams have finished dismantling all military installations. The transformation of former Krenth territory had been swift and thorough. Human forces had identified every military base, weapons facility, and strategic resource within the collapsed empire. Those with military value were destroyed or confiscated, while civilian infrastructure was preserved and improved. Captain Elena Rodriguez commanded the occupation force from the cruiser New Horizons. Her fleet maintained order throughout former Krenth space while human civilian administrators established new governments on liberated worlds. Rodriguez to Torres came her transmission. Sir, we've completed the evacuation of the Kepler mining complex. The former slave populations are being relocated to rehabilitation centers. What's the condition of the survivors? Better than expected. The human medical teams have made significant progress treating malnutrition and psychological trauma. Most will be able to return to their homeworlds within 6 months. The rehabilitation program was one of humanity's most important post-war efforts. Millions of beings had been enslaved by the Krenth, forced to work in mining operations under brutal conditions. Human, medical, and psychological teams worked around the clock to help survivors recover and rebuild their lives. Dr. Sarah Kim directed the medical program from the hospital ship Mercy. Her staff included specialists in alien biology, psychology, and trauma treatment. The diversity of species requiring care presented unique challenges, but human medical science had proven remarkably adaptable. The Trilaxian patients are responding well to nutritional therapy, she reported during the daily briefing. The Kepler survivors will need extensive treatment for heavy metal poisoning, but we've developed effective protocols. What impressed alien observers was not just human medical competence, but their commitment to treating former enemies with the same care as allied civilians. Krenth civilians received the same medical attention as Zephyrian refugees, despite their species' role in the war. Admiral Kesahai observed the human relief operations with growing amazement. His people had expected the Deathworlders to be savage conquerors who would rule through fear. Instead, they had proven to be principled administrators who worked tirelessly to rebuild what war had destroyed. Captain Chen, I must ask you something, he said during a joint planning session. Why are you helping our former enemies? The Krenth showed no mercy to anyone. Chen looked up from the reconstruction report she was reviewing. Admiral, we didn't fight this war to become like the Krenth. We fought to stop them from hurting innocent people. That includes Krenth civilians who had no choice in their government's actions. This concept continued to puzzle most alien observers. In their experience, wars ended with the victors exploiting the defeated. The idea of winners taking responsibility for losers' welfare was almost unknown in galactic civilization. The trial of Krenth war criminals had begun at the Justice Center. Judge Maria Santos presided over proceedings that were broadcast throughout the galaxy. The court applied human legal principles while adapting them for alien, defendants, and interspecies law. The defendants are charged with crimes against sentience, she announced during the opening session. These charges include systematic murder, enslavement, torture, and the deliberate destruction of civilian populations. The evidence against former Krenth leaders was overwhelming. Human forces had recovered extensive documentation of atrocities, including video recordings the Krenth had made for propaganda purposes. The trials revealed the full scope of the Dominion's brutality to a horrified galaxy. War leader Keksaval, one of the surviving Krenth commanders, served as a witness in exchange for reduced sentences. His testimony provided crucial details about Krenth military doctrine and command structure. The Dominion trained us to view other species as resources to be harvested, he explained through a translator. Resistance was to be crushed completely, with survivors enslaved for labor. Mercy was considered weakness. The trials served multiple purposes beyond justice for war crimes. They established legal precedents for interspecies conflicts and demonstrated human commitment to rule of law rather than arbitrary power. Most importantly, they showed the galaxy that even the most powerful military force was subject to ethical constraints. Senator Elizabeth Warren represented the Human Federation in negotiations with the Galactic Council. The discussions focused on establishing new frameworks for interspecies cooperation and preventing future conflicts. The human position is simple, she explained to the assembled alien delegates. We want peaceful coexistence based on mutual respect and shared prosperity. But we will not tolerate aggression against innocent populations. The Zephyrian representative, Speaker Mordoon, addressed the human delegation directly. On behalf of the Zephyrian Council, I want to thank humanity for saving our civilization. Without your intervention, my people would have been extinct within months. Similar gratitude came from dozens of other species that had been threatened by Krenth expansion. The humans had not just stopped a military threat, they had preserved entire civilizations from extinction. Colonel Jake Harrison now commanded the Peacekeeping Force, a permanent human military presence designed to deter future aggression. His bases were strategically positioned throughout the galaxy, ready to respond to threats against civilian populations. The mission is simple, he told his officers during a briefing. We maintain the peace through strength and readiness. Any species that thinks they can restart the old ways of conquest will learn otherwise. The peacekeeping mission required careful balance. Human forces needed to be strong enough to deter aggression, while avoiding the appearance of imperial domination. Harrison's troops were trained in cultural sensitivity and diplomatic protocols, as well as combat tactics. The economic transformation of former Krenth space proceeded rapidly under human administration. Instead of strip mining operations that destroyed planets, human companies introduced sustainable resource extraction and environmental restoration programs. The mining complex at Zerion has been converted to automated operation, reported Economic Administrator David Park. We've reduced environmental damage by 80% while increasing productive output. These improvements benefited everyone involved. Former Krenth subjects gained access to advanced technology and economic opportunities, while human companies developed profitable relationships throughout the galaxy. The contrast with Krenth exploitation was stark and obvious. Dr. Amanda Foster led the Xenobiology Research Program, studying alien life forms and ecosystems that had been damaged by Krenth operations. Her teams worked to restore damaged biospheres and preserve species that had been driven to near extinction. The biodiversity on Kepler-7 is recovering faster than projected, she reported. The ecosystem restoration protocols are exceeding expectations. This scientific cooperation created lasting bonds between human researchers and alien species. Unlike the Krenth, who saw other life forms as obstacles to exploitation, humans viewed biodiversity as valuable in its own right. As the first anniversary of the Battle of Nexus approached, the galaxy had settled into a new equilibrium. The Krenth threat was permanently eliminated. Human peacekeepers maintained order, and interspecies cooperation flourished under the protection of Deathworlder military might. Admiral Torres reflected on the transformation during a ceremony honoring the war's end. Representatives from 50 different species gathered to commemorate their liberation and express gratitude to humanity. 1 year ago, the galaxy lived in fear of the Krenth dominion, he said in his speech. Today, we celebrate not just military victory, but the triumph of civilization over barbarism. The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of a memorial to those who died during the Krenth Wars. The monument bore inscriptions in over 100 languages, honoring victims of all species who had suffered under the Dominion's rule.